Before the break, we started talking about returning to work and that the headlines that it's making as many federal workers head back to the office full time. We mentioned that some major companies like Amazon are requiring employees to return to the office or face losing their jobs altogether.
It's a really heated discussion right now, but will this lead to higher productivity and a better work environment? Here to talk us through these changes is Dave Lebel, Associate Professor and Director of the David Berg Center for Ethics and Leadership at the University of Pittsburgh School of Business. That's a mouthful.
Yes, it's
a
true.
great title to have, though. We're so glad that you're here because I think we are seeing those headlines. And for a lot of people who have returned to the office, they may think, oh, there's still a lot of people who are still working from home. This is still happening.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, no, thank you for having me. And I'm really just want to have the conversation because you hear a lot of people taking sides, like a debate, like one.
Like we just did.
Yeah.
One versus the other. And there's a lot of middle ground here. And because, like, employees and people, we just want two things at work for the most part: connectedness, like making connections, relationships with people. But we also want flexibility and autonomy, right? And so if you think about it, one pulls on one side and the other. So connectedness, getting mentorship, connecting with peers, that's going to be in person. Flexibility, autonomy, that comes from the remote work, and that pushes to another side. So we really need more of a conversation about how can we integrate those two things that people want. It's not an easy thing to do, but we need to have broader conversations rather than a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah. Everybody
go in person, or remote. It's not an either-or decision.
You took the words right out of my mouth. They can coexist. Two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I have to say, and of course we were talking about it earlier, what are some of the misconceptions that you've heard about working from home? Because yes, they may be throwing in a load of laundry, but that doesn't make them useless as employees.
Yes, and I think one big misconception is that you can't make relationships virtually or make connections. And when I'm giving meetings, this happens infrequently, but all of a sudden my cat's tail will pop up on screen, and just the faces of everybody else change. Like, yes, it might distract us for a few minutes. So we talk about who has pets, but there's some really good new research that shows that those spontaneous, impromptu moments really help people learn about each other, and there's like small moments of humanness.
Like this.
Oh, that's my productivity supervisor.
I love it.
That's good. That's my cat Belle. And so people want to talk about your pets, what sports team you like, so you can make connections if you're paying attention when people are on camera.
Humanizes them.
Ultimately, I think, especially as we're split down the middle on some of this stuff, I think it highlights that Americans have a real problematic issue with work-life balance.
Yep.
And, you know, people who can have and people who don't have it, it becomes, you know, this debate almost about it.
Yes, and I think it's a tough one, but there's a lot of benefits to working remotely and that flexibility. Research by my colleague Mark Ma shows that people are much more satisfied and happy when they get this, and they're less likely to leave when they have more choice and flexibility with that. I mean, that's an important thing, and it turns out actually the best employees tend to leave when you have when you force 5 days return to office. So you might be losing some of your best talent. And I think really what you said is a larger conversation about this work-life balance. It's really important to people. And if it's not remote, maybe talking about are there ways to build in more flexibility?
Yeah.
You could start to talk about a separate subject like 4-day work weeks if you have to be in person for retail. But I think leaders need to have the conversation with their employees rather than just deciding on their own.
It's just the forcefuless of it all.
Yes.
I'm an adult and I am a key part to this company, as you know, this is supposed to be a symbiotic, mutually beneficial relationship. Let's talk more about the research that what are the I would say jobs that want more flexibility, because as we mentioned before, it's the white collar ones that obviously can't stay home because they're in meetings and they're doing Zooms all day.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's not a one size fits all by any means. There's going to be different types of jobs. You see that I think like 60% of frontline workers are all in person. The 30% are more what you call white collar, but the use of technology. So I think you have to look at what I'm concerned about is when an organization says everybody has to come back. Well, you may have to look by department, by unit, maybe even by bosses, and I know that brings in fairness, but there are ways you can do this. I mean, you can give people more flexibility, but then talk about accountability. If you're going to get that flexibility, let's set some norms about how frequently you have to respond and when there are check-ins. There are ways to make this fair for everybody. It's not that when you give people remote work that they can just do everything on their own. And I talk to people and they hate it when people aren't responsive. And so create the norms that go with that.
It does beg the question if this is going to be here to stay, some of these mandates that are coming in, or if we'll see a return back to this, you know, balancing act that we've been.
We have to have you back for an update.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And if you want to hear more business news from Dave, you can check out his articles. We'll link you up on our website, kdka.com/talkpittsburgh.
Great conversation.